some point. And yeah, there were lots of questions I was sent by the local group, but I don't know if there is enough time to answer to all of them, and some of them is not really clearly maybe applicable for the Russian situation, and I will explain later. But I will start from the basic things. So what kind of tactics there are in the anti-war activism currently in Russia? So it's quite, how to say, basic things. It's not, the level of repression is pretty high, so it's not really possible to organize like major demonstrations or strikes or something. So it's basically, it comes down to mostly online activities and then small scale spreading of propaganda in the streets. In some cities it's still possible to organize pickets. This is depending on the region and also depending on the topic. Probably it's not possible, it's nowhere possible to organize anti-war demonstration, but in some areas you can have anti-repression actions. And then there are direct actions against military recruitment centers and rail transport and other targets also. Then different kinds of human rights works, letter writing, fundraising for the political prisoners. And also there are initiatives that help persecuted people to escape from Russia. And there is also a movement of wives and mothers of the conscripted men. And but this is not necessarily anti-war. It's just once, depending on the case, sometimes they want just their husbands back or their sons back from the front line. Sometimes they are just want more rotation or something like this. So this is not necessarily anti-war movement, and it's not so strictly repressed by the authorities, but of course it's also something that is creating some problems with the war machine. So goes to the anti-war messages. These are some anti-war just stickers being spread. There is this Z symbol, which was used in the first phase of the Russian invasion. So there is like, it's also this crossed Z is kind of anti-war symbol. Another sticker is also by autonomous actions. It has a quote from the Pushkin about the new society rising from the ruins of the old one. It's kind of more poetic. Then there is this kind of anti-fascist symbol crushing the Russian state heraldic symbols. And the last one in the right, it's against this restriction of the abortion rights. So this is not something that is directly connected to anti-war struggle, but this restriction on abortion, it's connected with the Russian imperialist and militarist developments, because the Russian state is very concerned on the small fertility rates. And one of the proposed solutions is to restrict access to abortion. So then these are stickers from the autonomous action. There are of course many other groups also producing stickers. Autonomous Action used to be a libertarian communist federation, but currently that was spread for maybe 15 cities at the peak, but all around the Russian and at some cases also in the other countries of the former Soviet Union. Right now it exists as a media project that is also distributing the stickers. And it also attempts, there are some members still staying in Russia, so it's attempting to stay in Russia as long as possible, the remaining activists, which is also limiting what kind of stuff can it be basically spread from the name of the autonomous action. There is, for example, not like direct support to Ukrainian anarchists in the front, even if there is sometimes discussion on this. This is just example of pickets possible in some areas. This is for one-person picket for some local anti-war political prisoners in Kazan, which was just last week, 11th of May. This would probably not be possible in Moscow, but in Kazan they somehow still managed to do this. It's a capital of the Tatarstan Republic. Then this is example of the wives of mothers of the conscripted. This is action in the Moscow. They just invited to this, I think this was Poklonye Gory or something, some of these war memorials, 9th of May, and they had just actions to bring some flowers. But you can actually see that there are also some white roses. So white rose is also proposed. It was proposed by feminist anti-war resistance to bring white roses in the Victory Day, during the Victory Day events. And you can see that some of the people also brought this anti-war, new anti-war symbol in the Victory Day event. But in general, yeah, this action in Moscow, I think there were no arrests. But of course, it's kind of not, how to say, directly political message. It's kind of this kind of, how to say, indirect protest, which is quite common now in Russia. Yeah, and I already mentioned feminist anti-war resistance. It's not, I wouldn't say it anarchist. Most of the vast majority of the members, they are not anarchist. There are some anarchists involved, but the organized structure, they try to keep it horizontal and non-hierarchical, and there are many things that are inspiring for anarchists. Already very quickly, in the couple of months, they managed to get 40,000 subscribers to their Telegram channel, and they were organizing various kind of decentralized protests during the first year of the war. Now they try to be very careful with the street actions because there is they have been declared how to say this neželatelné. It's kind of unfavored organization, which doesn't sound very serious, but actually it means that you can go to prison just for supporting this organization for many years. So they also stopped publishing. They had this kind of print and spread paper, but they stopped publishing it, and instead of some of the people started to publish new papers which are not related to network, because any kind of direct connection to the network can be dangerous. They do lots of online jobs, online work, lots of human rights works, and also meeting some politicians in the Europe. So it's not those tactics is also not exclusively anti-authoritarian. But this map, I hope it's a bit visible. I maybe make it try to make it slightly bigger for a second. That it's really, they made this is a questionnaire they made, I think in March, on how many cities they have groups, and it still was around 80 cities all around Russia that were reporting, also some quite distant places. So they still have people who consider themselves activists in very many places. So about direct actions, they are still happening. This was 14th of May. So just 2 days ago, in Volgograd region. So it's pretty far from the front line. This is area of the former Stalingrad area, and it was some freight train was fall down from the rails, and the authorities say that this was a sabotage, but of course we cannot be 100% sure. Sometimes it might be that there is just some, due to corrupted stuff, some rail tracks have went to very bad condition because the money has been stolen, and then the trains collapse and so on. So we never know for 100%, but at least, of course, it's also not so, it's a bit embarrassing for authorities to admit that the sabotage is taking place. So I think it's well possible that there was some sabotage action. It's possible that this is some organized by the Ukrainian secret services, but we also know cases that, for example, anarchists have been doing this kind of actions. So we don't know. It might be. This is for Mediazona. It's a many initiative originally founded by the Pussy Riot about basically prison riots and prison protests, but they also started to cover anti-war actions. They have been making maybe the most careful listing of various arson attacks against enlistment offices. But they haven't made a new report in about 10 months. Last time they made in July last year, and at that point they listed 113 arson attacks. And these blue ones, they are before the mobilization law in 2022, and the orange attacks they are after. There are also arson attacks against the riot police and cars with the Z markings. And also there are these railway attacks, like I showed the pictures, but these railway attacks they are having less impact in Belarus. In Belarus it was quite a strong campaign of railway sabotage, but this is still happening. Then which kind of initiatives they are calling for direct actions? There is the Anarchist Fighter and Anarcho-Communist Fighting Organization. It's a development from the Russian insurrectional anarchism. Already it has a certain kind of continuation for around 15 years. This Anarchist Fighter projects maybe started like 5 years ago on basis of some previous projects. But I don't think there has been a single attack in Russian claimed by the Anarchist Fighting Organization during this year. So it's possible that all of their militants have been forced to leave Russia at this point. But anyway, they are trying to at least to spread message about different tactics and so on. And in Russia, there is no cases of people who are related, or at least have been accused to be related to Anarchist Fighting Organization or other underground groups that would be arrested. All the people who have been arrested or in prison because of anti-war activities, it's lone actors. I will tell about several cases later. But in Belarus, there was recently, the government released a propaganda video. It's also available in the YouTube, and they claim that they arrested a group of teenage anarchists called the Black Nightingales, who were planning some sabotage actions against military targets in the Belarus. Belarus is another topic. I will not go so much to that. It's another society and another problems to some extent. But it's just to say that no anarchist anti-war group has been arrested. I wouldn't like to say this without mentioning that there is a group arrested in Belarus, but also these are very young people, the local anarchists who have been mostly in exile for the last almost 4 years. They don't know them. This further information comes only from the authorities. Hopefully there will be more information at some point. Of course, not all the initiatives calling for direct actions are anarchists. There is the Free Russian Legion and the Russian Voluntary Corpus, especially both of these have this nationalist Russian right involved. They are fighting in the side of the Ukraine, but they also try to agitate for underground guerrilla resistance inside Russia. Especially the Voluntary Corpus has lots of Nazis in it. But besides this pro-Ukrainian nationalist, there is also this accelerationist Nazis in Russia that are basically against both Russia and Ukraine. They just want to join these direct actions and attacks to create a general chaos. But they are not like many cases. There are a couple of cases that people arrested of the anti-war direct actions have been Nazis, so accelerationists. but they are not like super many of them. One more Ukrainian militant group is this Rospartisan of Ilya Ponomarov. Is a former opposition and Duma deputy who is now in Ukraine, try to organize this kind of Russian voluntary groups. He is not definitely not a Nazi, but is still cooperating with the more right-wing Russian groups, but also definitely not any kind of anti-authoritarian. It's just a politician who decided this kind of approach. And also, it's quite clear that some of the direct actions, they are organized by Ukrainian secret services, and they might be sometimes promising money to people. There is also cases, for example, very quite strange cases that, for example, some pensioners have been locked out from their bank account, and then they get message that if they throw some Molotov cocktail, they might get their money back or something like this. It's maybe Ukrainian secret services, maybe some other Ukrainian initiative, but this kind of case happens, and I think there was some media has been like investigating this, and they could find out like more than 10 cases already last year. So you cannot say always. There has been like different cases. Also, there are provocations by the secret services and so on. So not all of the anti-war direct actions are just some kind of ideological or idealistic militants, but probably most of them are. So this was not actually a question in the asks from me, but I just wanted to have explained that why. I mean, of course, it's quite a big wave of direct actions to have more than 100 arson attacks. It would be, I think, substantial in any country, and especially in Russia that doesn't have from during the last, 50 or 70 years, there is not this kind of tradition of direct action activism. So it's quite big, but also these direct actions, they are kind of atomized and isolated. And these big demonstrations, they were crushed already before the summer of 2022. There is kind of, obviously the anti-war movement is not about to stop the war now. And even still, according to some independent pollsters, there is between 15 and 30% of the Russians are against the war, and probably some part doesn't want to answer to this kind of questions. So there is still quite a significant anti-war sentiment, which is at least a minority, might be a majority also. But at this point, the anti-war movement is not about to stop the war. And what are the reasons for this? Well, might be the main reason that the Russian economy is actually quite strong. It's growing. It's growing more than in many EU countries. And the reason is that actually Russian fiscal policy, it was like before the war, it was super monetarist. Like Russia doesn't have any significant amount of foreign loans. In the contrary, it was storing lots of the oil and gas export money into the stabilization fund. And people didn't discuss this because still the level of living was so much higher than in the 90s. So people still have this perception that Putin actually made their lives better. But still, actually, if the money that came from the oil and the gas, if it was really put to economy, to the social services, to the healthcare, to the pensions and so on, the level of living would actually be much more higher. But instead, it was just stacked to some bank accounts. But now, because of the war, this money is put to economy, and it's being paid quite a good payments for those who go to the war, and also lots of kind of war industry investments to the war industry. Of course, this is not like very sustainable double weight or to create economic growth just to pay to some soldiers, but it's stimulating the economy. It's even being called war Keynesianism. And also now the Russia is advancing in the front, so it looks that there are good chances that Russia is going to win the war. So this is also holding back the protest. It's a sad, but sad truth is that usually there is strong anti-war protest in any society. They only start when the country is starting to lose the war, and Russia is not any exception in this sense. Also, the conscription is still a problem for a small minority only. Overall losses, like Ukrainian government is claiming that Russia has lost 400,000 soldiers dead or injured, but this is highly exaggerated. Like, there are different attempts to estimate how many Russians have died in the war, and this estimates they are maybe like 40,000 or 60,000 or something. This is still not like, it's a lots of soldiers, but it's still not risk that this is there for everyone. There are people who might be conscripted anytime, especially youth, but it's still not something that is that everyone is risking to go to war. And also, unfortunately, many people who have opposed the war, they just left to Russia. So this, in the end, it's in one sense it was good that so many people, like I think I have read estimate that even 800,000 people left to Russia after the start of the war. It's mostly educated people and it was a big blow for the economy. But also these people, in case they stayed in Russia, the anti-war movement, of course, would be much more stronger. And then, of course, there is unprecedented level of repression, to which the different social movements, they were definitely not ready. Like, even for posting social media, people are now getting several years of prison sentence. Okay, now I need to add some slides because there is a problem in the OBS that I can only show 12 slides at once. Okay, I will proceed. So, about this repressions against anti-war position, I will talk a lot about repressions because I'm involved in the anarchist, or I have been involved in the anarchist Black Cross work and other anti-repression work. So basically, rest of my talk will mostly be about repressions, but if you want to go back to some other topics, you can ask some questions. So this is Alexandra Skochilenko. It's a famous case from St. Petersburg. She was in 2022 replacing price tags in a shop with anti-war messages and snitched by just some random person in the shop, and she got a long prison sentence for this. OVD-Info has, it's another human rights project. It has listed more than 500 anti-war criminal null cases, and in the February of last year, Solidarity Zone, they tried to find out as many as possible cases of people charged of the direct actions, and they found 112 cases. Now it's, of course, already much more, but I don't think that anyone has attempted to create a summary. But then what has anarchists to do with it? Anarchists are just a small part of the targeted people, but it's like 500 cases. It makes sense to focus to something. And there is also, like, anarchists are also being targeted even without necessarily doing so much direct actions. it's anarchist movement in Russia is not very big, but it's still something that is concern for the authorities. Especially there was a wave of direct actions from 2008 to 2014, and even if this wave died down, it's still the authorities still haven't forgotten this, and this is, I think, the background in the network case, which is like 9 anarchists from Penza and St. Petersburg who were sentenced to very long prison sentences. The longest sentence, I think, was 19 years of prison for basically just being anarchist and discussing some direct actions online without actually doing something. And but also it's the logic of the repressive machine that it needs. It's typical of Russian to have this kind of quotas that you have to still. It was used in the Stalin's times, but it's still the thing that different police departments, they have to create certain number of arrests, certain number of criminal cases, and so on. And of course, in Russia, there are, I think now maybe 86 federal subjects in the Russian Federation, if you count these newly occupied areas, so maybe even 88. I think without them it might be 82 or 83 federal subjects. Every single of them have their own secret services that has to arrest at least a couple of extremists every year, even if it's somewhere in the North Siberia. So anarchists are quite easy target for this. And even 20 years ago, when it was much more free in Russia, it was still not very, very difficult to have some anarchist groups in this kind of peripheric places. Authorities also want to repress any discussion of Mikhail Slobitsky. Mikhail Slobitsky was an anarchist who attacked FSB offices in 2018 in Arkhangelsk Oblast. He was a lone fighter who made a bomb attack. This is the picture of him from CCTV camera when he's about to explode his bomb. And there were, like, I think altogether dozens of people who were repressed of supporting him in social media, and it was not even possible to trace all of these cases because it was lots of them were just some random average people without any connection to any political movements. But yeah, also there are cases of still anarchists and anti-fascists who are targeted for the Slobitsky cases, and still this Vilchevsky from Vladivostok in the Far East is in prison for these cases. But also, yeah, lots of cases, they are just reaction to anarchist activities, and these cases I will now tell a bit more about. But yeah, at first bit about prisoner support as anarchist strategy. So obviously this supporting prisoners, it's anarchist prisoners and supporting anti-war prisoners. It's not just some sort of humanitarian work. It's also political work. The lawyers don't always make difference in the political case. I think actually like a few months ago, it was maybe Vesna or some other human rights group. They published the news that they investigated all the political cases during the last couple of years in Russia, and they couldn't find a single case that someone was acquitted from the court. So obviously political cases, the work of defense lawyer is not necessary to free the accused, because all of these cases, they have been decided in advance. Might be sometimes possible maybe to get bit more shorter sentences or some other, but I think the main thing is basically that the lawyer is always before the trial. Its lawyer is pretty much the only person who can even meet the accused. So to get any kind of connection or support information, you basically have to have a lawyer, and in some cases it might be the same even after the court. And yeah, it's basically anarchist movement should be built with solidarity with itself. So it's kind of, how to say, difficult to talk about the solidarity if you cannot even maintain a good solidarity with yourself. And also, of course, like if we support the anti-war direct action prisoners, it also means that it's sending a message of acceptance of anti-war actions. So then I will talk a bit about some cases. Right now, maybe for anarchist movement, the biggest priority of the current cases is the Tumen case, because it's 6 comrades who were arrested already almost 2 years ago. It was in Ural and Siberia, 3 cities, Yekaterinburg and Tumen and Surgut. And they have been already like almost 2 years in prison, and only now the court process is about to start, and they need like lots of money for the lawyer costs. They are being held in prison in Tumen or the surrounding areas. And they have terrorist charges, which means that those who are accused of being members of the terrorist group, I think they can face up to 25 years in prison. And those who, one person is accused of the leadership, might be accused of getting a life sentence, which is in Russia, life sentence is a life sentence. No one has ever, as far as I know, no one has ever been released from a life sentence in Russia. They were 2 of them were basically arrested in the forest when and they were authorities are claiming that they were just practicing or testing some explosives, and the goal was to attack some electrical power stations. But I don't think there is much more proof than the confessions. This slides was a bit in the wrong order, but anyway, I will say there have been some also small examples of victories of the prisoner struggle. There was Ivan Kudryashov, was supported by the Solidarity Zone initiative. I will talk a bit more about them later. He declared a hunger strike. First of all, to access to vegan food and the parcels that were sent to him in prison. And he was actually, after this long hunger strike, he managed to get access to these parcels. He also, I think he had some other demands. Also, network case Viktor Filinkov also managed to challenge the prison conditions. He was sent continuously to isolation inside the prison, but he managed to challenge this. Then about the Tumen arrested. Kirill Brik and Denis Aydin, they were the Tumen case, the 2 persons who were arrested in Tumen. They were the first 2 being arrested, and unfortunately the Kirill Brik is now the cooperating witness. All of the arrested were tortured pretty heavily with electric shocks, and unfortunately Kirill Brik is now giving testimony against all the others. The Yekaterinburg was arrested is Yuri Neznamov and Daniel Chertikov. Chertikov is a veterinarian by profession, so this is a picture of him in his work. And then in Surgut there was Nikita Olenik arrested and Roman Paklin. I didn't have now. This was an old slide. I didn't have a picture of Roman. Now I think I wouldn't have, but I would have. But when I made the slides I didn't have. Nikita Olenik and Roman, they are from Surgut. It's a relatively small city in Antimilitarism. It's this oil production area in the middle of the Siberian swamps. They organized a libertarian library there. And Nikita Olenik, they now try to claim that he was the ringleader, the main guy, and this means that he might be facing a life sentence. Then another case, already is dating from before the war, is the Azat Miftahov. He was arrested in 2018. It was Solidarity there was a solidarity action for some other arrested anarchists, and attacks against the ruling United Russia Party. Several people managed to escape from Russia, but as of Mr. was arrested, he's also quite a successful mathematician. So he has been supported a lot by the scientific community, especially the mathematicians. And he was given a 5-year sentence for this one action. But now actually there was a new frame-up case against him. It was claimed that he had was expressing some sympathy of terrorism and anti-war views to the other prisoners, which is of course complete bullshit. But he was arrested. He was supposed to be released in September, but one day after, like in the same day, like just a couple of minutes, he just walked out of the prison gates. But he was arrested again, and now he was given another 5-year sentence. So obviously he's a person that the authorities just completely hate, and who knows how many times they will do this same thing. So obviously he would be happy to now to get some support. Alexei Rashkov is one of the few anarchists that are arrested of the direct actions. It's more like a lone anarchist, not connected to the movement. He's one of the first people committed one of the first attacks against the military enlistment officials. Back then, these attacks were not. He didn't make much damage. So, at that point, like 2 years ago, there were very differing approaches of authorities towards these direct actions. And they didn't consider this like so serious, so they didn't put to prison. He was just in the sort of home arrested, and he managed to escape abroad to Kyrgyzstan. But from Kyrgyzstan, he was kidnapped illegally back to Russia, and now he is also waiting for a trial. And another anarchist, Ruslan Sidik, was arrested, I think, last year in August or September. Is accused of railway sabotage and drone attacks against the military airport in the Ryazan region. Also might be facing some quite serious sentence for this kind of actions. This drone attack happened like many months before he was arrested, so it was initially successful, but somehow they then managed to claim that he was doing this also. Might be, of course, bullshit claim. Okay, I think, yeah, so now I again have to add more slides. Because of the limitations. Okay, bit of repeat. Yeah, Chita case was. Chita is a city in the Far East, close to the Chinese border. There were 2 young anarchists arrested in 2022 for for some graffiti, and also suspecting of maintaining a local anti-war Telegram channel. And they were originally also released court pending. They tried to escape but didn't succeed. And Alexander was put to prison immediately after they managed to leave, and Lyubov was also sent to prison a bit before her sentence. Eventually they got 6 and 3.5 years of prison sentence in April. So, a bit about Anarchist, Black Cross of Moscow. It's quite an old group. It's not very big. Already some members have been forced to leave Russia for a long time ago. And now it's plans to move all of the activities outside of Russia. Because there has been a couple of worrying cases. There was one person accused of anti-war direct actions was tortured. Already after the sentence, he was tortured in the transfer to his prison colony, and authorities were also asking questions about Anarchist Black Cross. So obviously the authorities are interested. And also they declared the Federation of Anarchist Black Cross as also this, how to say, niželatelné, like not recommended or not, how to say, not suitable or something like this organization. They obviously don't know that this Federation of Anarchist Black Cross is only active in the United States. There is mostly the anarchist Black Cross groups around the world, they are independent. Moscow group also has been independent, and the other Russian groups have been independent. There are some networks, but there is not. The Federation is only active in the United States, but this kind of attempt is probably like attempt also to repress anarchist Black Cross activities. But it's still possible to donate through cryptocurrencies and PayPal. It just will take much more time for the donations to reach out to some people. And then, we also, especially in the beginning of the war, we started to support in general anti-militarist prisoners, but it might be that from now on we have to for more. Because of all of these problems, the anarchist Black Cross also has to focus more on anti-authoritarian and anarchist prisoners. There is link to the news site. Then bigger and more active initiative is the Solidarity Zone. It's mostly also now active abroad. And the spokespersons of the Solidarity Zone, all of them are living abroad, but they still manage to maintain information networks also inside Russia. It was established almost 2 years ago by some of the authoritarian activists to support anti-war prisoners. They are currently providing lawyers for 20 anti-war prisoners who have been doing direct actions. Quite often the prisoners who have been committing direct actions, it might be in some cases that they are listed by the human rights organization, but often the reason is, for example, that they didn't receive a fair court hearing or torture or something like this, but not direct like support of their activities directly. But Solidarity Zone is concentrated to support these direct action prisoners. And besides these 20 prisoners that they are supporting, they are following cases of more than 20 other anti-war prisoners, like at least try to maintain some kind of correspondence and reporting the addresses and so on. They still are not having a website, but they have a Telegram channel, which also has posts in English. They are present in some social media, where they also post stuff in English. And it's a very active initiative, almost daily news about the direct action prisoners. And they also have been able to raise quite a lot of funds, but also there is a big demand of funds. And then just some other initiatives. Memorial is this very old and traditional human rights organization. And it's actually not one organization, but it's a branch of many organizations, and they have after especially that some of this registered organization got banned by the Russian authorities, they split to several branches. One of them is this support of political prisoners, project of political prisoners of Memorial. It might be that the reporting to have most information about the anti-war prisoners. They also support other kind of political prisoners, but they are not always so, how to say, they also don't try to cover everything. OVD-Info is also project set up by Memorial. It was originally the purpose of OVD-Info was to support people who are arrested in the demonstrations immediately afterwards. So it was kind of like a legal support group. But after the demonstration became more or less impossible in most of the areas, they have focused also to support anti-war prisoners. Uznik Online is a small initiative encouraging supporting organizing prisoners to like online and offline events to support prisoners mostly abroad. Russian Reader is a pretty good general blog made by Thomas Campbell. It also has lots of news about political prisoners in English. Is Irkutsk, ABC Irkutsk apparently the website has dropped accidentally from the slide. I may have to add it afterwards, but you probably also find it by Googling. It's another anarchist Black Rose group in Siberia. And then there is a good website with English interface to send mail to prisoners from abroad, this Prison Mail Online. It's possible to use this to, in some cases, the mail may reach the prisoner in just a couple of days. So, is this my last slide? Yes, this was the last slide. So this was more or less the presentation. I think I will now can answer some questions. I hope that at least I managed to answer some of the original questions, or it's understandable why it was not possible to answer those questions. I didn't discuss so much this. Also, there were questions about cooperation between anarchists from Belarus and Ukraine. But like, it's not possible to have like any kind of, how to say, more or less, it's risky to have some sort of conferences. It's risky to call for action. So of course there is like informational exchange and common discussion, a closed discussion platform between anarchists from Russia and Belarus and Ukraine, but mostly like people are involved in this kind of local projects, like prisoner support, spreading some agitation and so on. The scale of possible activities and the scale of the movement, it kind of doesn't necessarily make it meaningful to have lots of international coordination. And also in the kind of dangerous and repressive situations, the coordination is a bit of a risky business. Okay, I think I had the first. I will enable the Zoom microphone for the questions. So now I think the Zoom, but I cannot hear you talking yet. Maybe you are also on mute. Maybe you can unmute yourself in case someone wants to.
So I think the Twitch just lagged behind. We are now on Zoom, and I think we can hear you now, and I hope you can hear.
Yeah. So maybe is there maybe some questions from the Zoom if someone has something to ask, or chat, both are fine.
Okay, so I will ask a question. So are there different opinions inside, let's say, the anarchist movement in Russia towards this war, or how to behave, how to act against the regime, or what do the people discuss?
Yeah, of course, like it's the same discussion that is anywhere. There are, I think, like in general of if we talk about the anti-fascist, for example, there are also anti-fascists who are supporting the war, and already since 2014. So the anti-fascist movement, they have there are like those who are basically against the war, and those who are supporting the war, and those who are supporting the kind of hoping that Ukraine will win, and those who not. So basically, it's anti-fascists have been joining the war in both sides of the front, but also the Nazis. Like there are Nazis fighting in the Ukraine and Nazis fighting also in the Russian different volunteer units. So basically, it's kind of sad situation in this respect. As for the anarchist movement, I would say the situation is a bit better, because at least there are no anarchists who are supporting the war or supporting the Putin regime. Actually, I read an interview of one such a person in some website, but it might be a fake, because no one knew this person who could be this person. Of course, we don't know everyone who has been anarchist in Russia during the last 30 years, but yeah, it's so there might be like something like this, but at least I don't know, and I don't know anyone who would know any anarchist who meant to support the war. But there are anarchists who are basically supporting or kind of hoping that Ukraine would at least manage to defend the territories, and then there are anarchists who have this kind of no war but a class war position, that basically we should not do anything. It should be others fighting with each other. There are also like this kind of tendencies to some people who have this position in also in Ukraine. But also, I don't know, we don't so much even have discussion with this with this position, because for like I've been involved in the anarchist Black Cross work and also an autonomous action while I was in Russia, and I'm still connected. And in these networks, it's pretty clear that Russia is imperialist country, which is basically has developed completely to fascist system. And any kind of positive development in the Russian society, it would require that Russia would lose the war, or at least not win, not to gain any extra territories or so on, because if there is some sort of victory, it's kind of will be a disaster. And Ukraine is basically just Ukrainians are fighting for themselves, and lots of Ukrainian anarchists went to the war, and even some Russian anarchists went to the war to fight for Ukraine. And most of the Russian anarchists, they also know some comrades from Belarus and Ukraine or Russia who died in the war. So it's not I wouldn't say that there is like so much discussion. It's just how to say, these point of views are so far from each other, because this kind of staying aside and kind of being, how to say, against the war but not doing anything, just being like armchair against both sides, it's a bit like privileged position when people are fighting to avoid fighting for the possibility to basically live in their country and not to be just killed there. Because Russian occupation in Ukraine, it wouldn't be like the Putin's regime, because Putin regime, basically you can be anarchist as long as you don't say anything against the war or anything against Putin. No one is disturbing you. You can discuss Magnum movement in some faculty as much as you want. But in Ukraine, it wouldn't be the same. Like every anarchist would be arrested and tortured and killed if Russia occupied all of the Ukraine. So it's kind of, how to say, people in the networks I'm involved in, none of them would condemn some Ukrainians who are joining the army to fight against the invaders. But yeah, I think this is the same discussion everywhere. It's not Russia is not so much different. Also, I don't think that I don't think that there is kind of opposition to any kind of direct actions against the war. It's more that matter of risks and strategy and so on. Like those groups or initiatives which are not promoting direct action, they are not promoting direct action because they think it's somehow problematic strategy. It's more like a security issue, because there is still also like anarchists doing open events. There is actually even an anarchist social center even in Moscow, which is organizing lectures and prisoner support events and so on. So it's still in some level it's possible to have even open activities, even if it's increasingly hard and difficult. I hope this was answer to the question.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I will ask here to the people if somebody has a question now. Okay. Okay, so the question was, what can we, so the people here in Germany, what can we do to support anarchists in Russia? So one thing is with money, but are there other possibilities to support the people?
Yeah, of course. I'm involved lots of this prisoner support networks, and it's quite straightforward. Like it's spreading the information about the prisoners, about the cases, raising funds for them, and also correspondence with the prisoners. With the correspondence, it's of course a bit tricky that everything has to be in Russian, but also nowadays the auto translation is working very easily. Then it's a bit more tricky when you get the letter back, because they are handwritten, so then you have to find someone who is actually understand Russian, but it's still possible. And also Russian Black Cross groups can help with this. So with the prisoner cases it's quite simple, but there is also like these other initiatives that can be supported by spreading information. I didn't told that there is like different kinds of human rights initiative, but also, for example, this Vivozhuk initiative, which is helping people to escape from Russia. Feminist anti-war resistance, I showed this map of their activities in Russia, but they have groups in many cities, also abroad, in German-speaking countries, at least Vienna and Hamburg, and a couple of German cities. I don't think they have a group in Regensburg, but they are active also in many European cities. So it's just possible to contact the closest group and discuss what can be done, because they have lots of different consensus raising activities and so on. And also, like many Russian anarchists, they also have been involved, for example, in the support for the Ukrainian refugees. Now it might be that already more or less the kind of urgent problems with the refugees in Europe might be solved. I don't know how is the situation in Germany. In Russia, definitely not, because the support structures are much worse. But yeah, this is something that comes to mind. When I was talking, there is the feminist anti-war resistance network. It has also, I think, at least in 3 cities of Germany, they have groups and some activities. So they are also doing actions. So it's one good initiative to be in contact with. And there is also now some attempts to organize Russian anarchist and anti-fascist abroad. There is an initiative in German-speaking countries called Appelwoch, which is organized, and there are groups also, but some other groups. But the thing is that most of the Russian anarchist and anti-fascists, they didn't manage to go to EU. They are mostly staying in Turkey or Georgia and some other Middle East or Central Asian countries. But there are some attempts to organize this kind of groups in German-speaking countries also. But yeah, I think that was everything about this question. We can continue to the next one.
Okay. Yep. Okay, so the question is, do we have like a prognosis? I hope this is the right word in English. Or which is your prognosis for this war? For maybe Russia will win, or what do you think?